Welcome back to the FloTrack podcast. Lincoln was about to introduce the podcast, but I stepped in and changed it up. We're recording video this time. We got a nice little side by side action. Lincoln, how you doing? Week 2 of quarantine.
Week two. Yeah, week two. I think week two might end up being a little more challenging than week one was, just for the mindset, realizing that we're set in for the long haul. But I'm glad you took over the reins of introing this because that's the one thing we were a lot more organized this time, but then we didn't decide who was going to do the intro. So I started to inhale to say something because I didn't know what you were going to do. But you took it over. I'm proud of you. Good job.
Yeah, so for those listening, email the pod, flowtrackpodcast@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts, what you're thinking about when you're in seclusion by yourself in your dorm room, apartment, house, barn, wherever you dwell right now.
Underground
Uh,
bunker.
yeah, underground bunker. You get the idea. But yeah, track isn't happening, but this
It's not.
podcast is.
It's not back. It's not back. In
It's not
case
back.
anyone's curious.
Speaking of
Uh,
it not being back, the flow track uh, theme or slogan was "Track is back." You remember
mm,
when Ryan and Fenton came up with that slogan like 7 or 8 years ago? Do you remember that? There's
Ryan
like
and
T-shirts printed.
Fenton.
Oh,
You mean
Ryan,
Ryan and
Alex, and Ryan.
yeah? There you go. There you go. I
Alex
do.
and Ryan.
I
Yeah.
think I still have a shirt with track is back. A little ironic right now. It is not back. Especially in Canada, it's definitely not back in Canada right now, as they just pulled themselves out of the Olympic Games that have, as of yet, not been postponed.
So why don't you run down what's happened over the weekend with the IOC, with a lot of the Olympic athletes having
Sure.
some talk, and then World Athletics talking, and now USATF and Athletics Canada. What would you say is a timeline of events that's happened in the past 48 hours since our last pod?
Yeah, there's been a lot of pressure on the IOC to postpone the Olympic Games. On Saturday, USATF CEO Max Siegel wrote a letter saying that they would like to see the Olympic Games postponed. I'm sure that there were other things before that. I think USA Swimming came in the day before and asked for the Olympics to be postponed from the IOC. Uh, a day later, as in yesterday, World Athletics, so all of track and field essentially said, no, we want the games postponed. Along with that, Team Canada, for all their sports, said we're not going to even be sending athletes to the Olympic Games, even if there are an Olympic Games in July and August. So that was pretty significant. Meanwhile, the IOC came out with kind of a confusing statement, but basically the gist of it was they're going to give themselves a 4 week deadline to decide. I mean, I think we all assume it's going to be 4 weeks, and then they're going to tell us, "Oh yeah, they're postponed." With just the way this is, the trajectory of all this, it just seems to be heading towards that way. They've lost the PR battle. Everyone is saying postpone, 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 postpone. I saw Ashton Eaton, saying push it to 2021. We all think that's going to be the outcome. Now, that's going to create some logistical issues, but of course, everyone in the entire world is dealing with logistical issues of scheduling things, and now they're going to be on top of things that were previously scheduled in 2021. And track, we think of, okay, we pushed the Olympics to 2021. Well, what are we going to do with Eugene? I guess you could push that back a year, but it just throws everything kind of out of whack. But yeah, the IOC with Thomas Bach came out with a statement yesterday, and you kind of had to read it twice. But they're dealing with the fallout of it. And there's a sentence in here that really highlights what they're dealing with, other than just rescheduling the games and possibly losing out on billions of dollars. But they're talking about the situation. This is directly from the statement. The situations with millions of nights already booked in hotels is extremely difficult to handle. And the international sports calendar for at least 33 Olympic sports would have to be adapted. So I feel for them in that regard. I still think they're late to the party. They need to just go ahead and say it's postponed and get a 4 week, get a head start on trying to figure this out. It's not going to happen by July and August. It's becoming very, very clear. We may not have any sports for until the fall. I mean, that's the best case scenario at this point. all of 2020 could be wiped out. We don't know where this is going.
I see.
But when you
I
already have,
disagree with that.
well, yeah, but again,
I mean,
you're not the medical expert, and it's the way this is tracking with the increased cases across the world. There is, it doesn't make sense to have this in July. July is quickly approaching, and it,
is July
you know,
quickly
all
approaching?
the
It's
experts
March
say
twenty
it
third.
is not going to be slowed down by then. So
Yeah, but I don't think it's crazy for the Olympic governing body to be like, "Hey, we'll let you know by end of April." Like
no, of
that's
course not. Of
still
course not.
like, and for like people to think like, "How dare you take time on the one of the biggest decisions ever made for an for a sport governing body." I think everyone just wants solutions done in 140 characters in a tweet and be like, "Yeah, it's canceled. Cool."
Hmm.
But like it's a lot more complicated, and I think like people were freaking out that there was a line in the IOC statement saying we will not cancel the games, and everyone's like, people's health is in jeopardy, and like people didn't really realize no, what they meant was they're not going to cancel the games, they're just going to postpone them, like which doesn't put people's health in jeopardy. Postponing the Olympic Games, not canceling the 2020 version, does not put everyone's health in jeopardy if you hold it a year later or 2 years later or 6 months later or whenever they decide to do it. I've always been under the assumption that if you have an event end of July, you shouldn't be forced to decide about that event in March. You should at least see what the trajectory is going, because we all talk about all the experts are saying this, but it's like predicting the weather. You have a better understanding of the longevity of a situation as more time and more data comes in. Like predicting what the international reality is of the coronavirus in July is a lot harder to do in March than it is to do end of April. You have more data end of April. You, that's just a reality. And I think
Yeah.
IOC wants that more data, and they also want to figure out where they don't want to just postpone it and then say we're going to have it later. They want to have an actual date, and in order to get that date, it requires coordinating with, they said, 33 uh, sport governing bodies. Like they want to, I'm sure they want to reach out to FIFA and be like, all right, what's your plan with the World Cup, right? And making sure they're not like, they don't want to pick a date that like messes up with the World Cup qualification, because soccer's a
Mhm.
big sport for the Olympics, right? So there's a lot of different elements where they like, I'm sure World Athletics is like, do whatever you want, we'll adjust accordingly. But some, like the NBA, is going to be like, well, we're going to try to still have the NBA season go into late summer, so don't, just keep that in mind if you want our athletes. I think it's unrealistic for us to expect the IOC to make a statement right away, and it makes more sense for them to have a complete plan as opposed to just pull the pull the flip the switch right away or pull the lever. What's the phrase? Pull the underneath whatever. Pull the plug. Yeah, that's the word.
Pull the plug. I'm glad you thought of that. I was going
But
to
do
say
you
pull the
understand what I'm
rug.
saying though?
I
Like
do.
the
No, you
idea
bring
that
up
like
you bring
how
up a
dare
lot
they
of good
don't decide
points.
right now, right?
You bring up a lot of good points. I think what people want to see from the IOC is that they're joining in sync with the rest of the world by saying we're valuing health and safety over a sporting event. But you're right; they totally deserve and need the 4 weeks to coordinate with all those sports, all those governing bodies, and to figure out what 2021 will look like for an Olympic Games when, like they said, like hotel logistical issues, not just related to when will these dates not conflict with water polo, but it's how is Tokyo still going to be able to handle all this a year from now when they didn't plan on this, and they I'm sure contracts were signed for specific dates. There's a lot of complications. I think what people want to see is for them to say, okay, it's postponed because we know this isn't going to be slowed down. We haven't figured it out, but they in themselves, the IOC, want to have all their ducks in a row. And I agree with you in that sense. Like they're trying to figure out all those technical things, but people want to see that they're listening to what the world is saying and what people are going on, and they're not turning a blind eye just to make billions of dollars. But I think your scenario, your reasoning makes a whole lot of sense. It's a
Yeah,
rare
it's
moment that I just agree with you.
well, yeah. I mean, we live in a society now where we expect instant reaction to every single thing. Like in the NBA, like people were demanding owners figure out how they're going to pay their athletes within 24 hours. Not pay their like facilities crew staff, like arena workers. They
Right.
demanded them to know that they were going to pay them like their payment plan within 24 hours of the season being canceled. And it's like, hey, like let them figure it out. They don't like they it's a complicated thing, and it just takes time for people to come up with a plan that's justified, that's right, that makes sense, and not just a tweet saying like we got it. You know, people expect instant gratification. I think it's because
Well,
Twitter makes people think they
yeah,
can
of
get
course.
immediate
Outrage
results.
culture is at peak form right now because everyone is on Twitter all the time. However, I will say when you have people who are writing the checks that are billionaires, and certain people have come out and said, "Oh yes, we'll compensate the arena workers," and other owners of similar extreme wealth have not. People are just they start to get antsy and they say, "Why are you not paying for these people? You're going to be fine." So there's been a big rich versus poor conversation uh, going on. Obviously, with people, some people are in extreme danger of being being without food when there's no work to be done, and other people obviously are well set, so they wanted to see that covered. But you're right, there's a mixture of serious concerns and then outrage culture, and those don't exactly mix well, and they create chaos maybe sometimes where there doesn't need to be. And it again, everyone has so much time to be on Twitter. I'm getting to the point right now, just for my mental well-being, where I kind of like I need to step away from Twitter because it's so negative, and I understand everything is pretty negative right now. But whew, it's tough. This is a rough patch in all phases of life.
So based on like what we said, the like Canada saying we're not going unless you delay it. I mean, I'm sure a bunch of other nations are going to start doing the same thing just to kind of put more pressure on IOC. I think IOC doesn't need the pressure from Canada to make a decision. I think they're going to make the right decision on their own based on more data and more planning in these next 4 weeks. But basically, now that we're living in a world where the betting odds are saying there's going to be a delayed Olympics. Um, what do you think if you're an elite athlete on March? Who kind of what do you do? Do you still try? Do you just like take a month off? Like, what do you do if you know you don't have
Yeah.
to worry about competitive running for now another year?
I mean, everything is base phase, right? Right now. I mean, you're right. You're probably not racing for the better part of a year. I guess indoors 2021. Let's cross our fingers and hope that is ultimately going to be fine. But that's probably, betting odds, that's probably the next season. So you're just trying to stay healthy. If you're a distance runner, you're getting in volume. If you're a sprinter, you're also getting in volume. What volume looks quite different from for sprinters than distance runners and field athletes as well. It's staying healthy and staying in shape and not trying to put on weight. And yeah, I don't think there's any point to be doing workouts right now that are sharpening you up for a season that's not going to happen, right? I mean, Canada already pulled out. Like, Mohamed will not be at the Olympics, even if there is one, right? That's weird to think. That makes me think that
I
there's not going to be an
disagree.
Olympics. You think they're going to be
Canada,
doing workouts to sharpen up for July and August? That
no,
seems pointless.
I just think in a world in the rare world where things die down and they still hold the Olympics, maybe 2 weeks delayed or whatever, and Canada still has this, we're not going, Canada will change their mind.
Hmm.
100%.
Yeah. It just you look at the models of where this disease is going, it's unlikely. I mean, yeah, obviously Canada, they it's a self-inflicted thing. They can obviously change it. They're not gonna be like,
Yeah,
oh, we said something and literally all the coronavirus has calmed down. No, we're still gonna hold by that. No, of course. They're trying to
yeah,
put pressure on the IOC. And I know you don't, but I applaud them for that because this is serious, and the IOC needs to be pressured into saying don't make any foolish decisions that could. I mean, you talk about the Olympic Games with so many people, so many countries. You realize how quickly the coronavirus could spread further if they held the Olympic Games when they shouldn't. I mean, it would be a disaster. This is already a disaster. So I understand countries, and I think we'll see that too. I think this week, I mean, my prediction is uh, USATF or the USOPC will do a similar thing. We'll say we're not sending athletes. Uh, you know, I, I just think just because Canada and just because it's them and we all like to make fun of them for I don't know being cautious and kind of being the quiet younger brother just because they did it does not mean that it was foolish or outstepping their bounds. I think we're going to see a lot of countries doing that, and just till we get to the point where it's so obvious that IOC has to postpone these games.
yeah. Well, back to what I was thinking about in a world where we don't have the games, um, but say like like by end of May or mid June, there's a lift on gathering, restrictions, right? And you're allowed to gather in 50 or less or whatever, right? Or even 100 or less, you're allowed to gather. Do you think that these athletes will have like mini time trial races to kind of just with like no pressure? Like, will a lot of like summer races, assuming in a world where I know it's hard for you to see this world, but in a world
Hmm.
where summer racing still happens without an Olympics, just in a small, because how many people really show up to a small track meet? Maybe less than 100, right? Do you think there will
Sure.
still be like athletes who just do like hey, let's just see what happens and try to run a fast time, even though they know they don't have to work. Like, cause there's no stress now on it. There's just like go for a fast run, a fast time.
I mean, you could see some athletes do that. Certainly, some athletes need races to be validated. That's taking the optimist view and thinking that we're going to have, a situation where it's going
I'm
to be
asking. I'm
approved to
already.
be 50 or 100 people. But will
I'm asking you
athlete?
to
I mean,
live in
in
that
training, I'm
reality.
sure there will still be time trials and whatnot. Um, Most athletes, I would say, would think it's not worth it to try to race. Like there's zero point to doing that and getting hurt. Like if you're getting hurt, you're making mistakes right now because this time the only positive thing to come out of this is that if you had some issues in your body you have time to get them corrected to get ready for what we assume will be a 2021 Olympic Games. So I would say maybe some people will do that. Most
But
people will just do it in practice, but most people will not race in any shape and form. What do you
say
think?
you're someone like Kersha Schweizer who, I I mean, say you're someone like Kersha Schweizer or Paul Chalimo who just feels like you're in the best shape of your career. You're in a peak time in your 10-year career where like this is a time where I can rip off a fast one. And as much as we value, making world teams and winning medals, there's also a part of the sport where is PRing and running a season's best, or not season's best, like a
Sure.
personal best. Like, what's the reason for Krista Schweizer to run a 3K at BU when there's no world indoors? 3K isn't an Olympic qualifying time. She was doing it because she
Hmm.
wanted to have a fast time on her record, right? And I think some athletes are going to be like, now there's no pressure for an Olympic qualifying like arc of trying to make it to the trials and run faster trials and win a medal. They might just create an arc of, hey, let's pick a race, let's do a time trial in Portland in late August, where kind of like what the Bowerman guys did in September, and let's try to run a fast 5K or something like that. I think some athletes are going to look towards a fast time trial end of August, early September, when they would have been doing the Olympics, or like end of Diamond League season, and kind of do some local fast time trials and make it a legal mark. And then it's like, hey, you can get at least some win out of the season without there being an actual championship to qualify for.
Hey, I'd be in support of that. My take specifically on Krista Swizer. She's a member of Bowerman Track Club. They don't race very much, period. And when there's no official races, I think you can guarantee they're not going to race at all. But you're right. The precedent somewhat was set, although that was for standards, was set for Bowerman doing a kind of a rogue race when they did that Portland 5,000 last summer. You will certainly see, I think, some makeshift things happen, assuming that this doesn't continue to get really, really bad. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what tomorrow looks like. Everything's changing so fast. Certain cities in the country are on lockdown. Everything, the world could look totally different in a few months. I just know, for lack of a better term, I mean, people are dying, and so it may not be the best look if that's still the case in a few months for athletes to be like, "Hey, we got a time trial meet coming up." I obviously you can't stop living your life just because other people are stricken with illness, but
yeah,
I just don't think that's going to be happen, or I don't think that's going to happen, or I don't think that's going to be advised to do, just because it's not a it's not a good look. I mean, you don't see NBA athletes like going over right now to each other's house and playing like 3-on-3 just because they can.
Yeah, it's also March 23rd, right? We're talking about August, right? We're talking about
practice.
A third of a year away from here, so.
Not a game, practice.
So,
yeah,
I mean,
it could happen.
I think it will happen. I'm on a different spectrum of you. I'm on a different perspective of you, that I think that, I don't think we're going to be under quarantine for a year or a year and a half. I think we're going to be under quarantine for a few months. That's my perspective. Yeah. So
hope so.
Hope
so. Yeah, that's the case.
Hope so. So hope so. But so with this whole IOC stuff, and basically the sport is basically canceled when there's no Olympics. What we talk about, like what the athletes do training wise, and kind of, do they chill? Do they still try to do a time trial if they're legally allowed to at the end of summer? But what do you think it's like the emotional toll on the athlete, especially ones who thought that like this could be their last Olympics, or ones where they thought this could be their first Olympics? What do you think the toll is emotionally on these athletes?
Well, the toll is hard on everybody across all walks of life. I know that's not what you're asking, but they kind of have to put their lives in perspective and realize that, yes, for them, for athletes qualifying for the Olympics, if it's your first, if it's your third, if it's your last, whatever it is, it's what they've invested their entire lives in. But, people across the world have invested their entire lives in their careers as well, and that's being threatened or on hold or already eliminated at this point. So, they're not going to get a lot more sympathy just because they play a sport. Kind of like, I think what Mike Smith said at NCAA Indoors was, we're lucky that we're able to play a game, and that's the most important thing in our lives. It's tough, of course, for all those athletes. It's tough for I think of athletes like Donovan Brazier. That he was going to be the favorite for the Olympic Games, and he still, in all likelihood, will be for next year. But everyone loses a year. If you're an athlete on the come up like Brazier, you lose a year of your prime, and that's the case for many athletes. So that's a huge bummer. And if you're getting older, you lose you lose a chance in one of your few years remaining as an athlete to still compete, still contend for medals. That said, I mean, next year is not too far off. So if we have next year and the Olympics are in 2021, it's not going to be that big of a loss, and athletes will be in a lot better position than the majority of people across the world. So I feel bad in a sense, but I don't, given where everyone else is at, on the whole, athletes aren't hurting too bad from this.
Yeah, I think it's an emotional toll. I think they're hurting. Uh, Obviously, you could say that with anything, like even in a world where there was no coronavirus, and someone gets fourth at the Olympic trials and they're devastated, you could also say, well, there's world hunger in other countries. Don't be devastated
Of course.
about getting fourth at the Olympic trials. So you could always take it like life isn't that big of a your life struggles are never as bad as others are in this country when we have 7 billion people in the world. Um, but I do think it's an emotional toll. I think, especially for older athletes, because they know what it takes, and like I think a lot of them were kind of. I think of someone like Allison Felix, who's kind of thinking like as or Justin Gatlin. They're just trying to like extend for one more year, right? And now they're being told like you got to extend for 2 more years. It's just like it's a lot. It's a lot of time. Like especially when you're older. Like when you're young, you're like, well, I plan on running for 10 more years. When you're near the end of your career, you're like, well, I'm looking at stopping soon. And I think for older athletes, it's kind of like, do I want to do this again for 2 more years just for one more Olympics when I've already been to a bunch? Like, I think there might be some athletes who might be like, screw it, I'm done because I just don't want to. I want to relax. I want to
Beer
retire.
me.
Yeah, beer me. Yeah, right. I want to quarantine my career for the rest of the month. Whatever. I mean, maybe they're not driven like that. Maybe they've never been lazy and they're always driven to extend. But there's some athletes who are just like, hey man, I'm just tired, right? And I don't want to do this for another year. Like, because Justin Gatlin comes to my mind because he said that the Olympics is his last season, and then everyone would follow up with, why not 2021? It's in America. Wouldn't you want that to be your last season? And he always says like, no, like I'm done. Like after, like I don't want to do another one. So everyone has a different perspective, but
Are you
yeah,
trying to get
I
the
wonder.
listeners to feel? Are you trying to get the listeners to feel bad for Justin Gatlin?
Oh yeah, if I can do that, I can do anything. If I can get the listeners to
Yeah,
feel bad for Justin Gatlin.
maybe he's not going to want his last season to be in the U.S. because he knows how he's been treated in the U.S., which is
Oh man,
not well. It's not like he's everyone's favorite.
that's a good point. Maybe he didn't want to have to deal with the booze in Tokyo. He's probably loved he's loved in Asia, like in China and
I don't
Japan. I'm sure
know.
he's loved. Yeah, he's remember he did that. He did like I'm not sure if it was a Japanese game show or it was probably a
It
Japanese game
was.
show
Yeah, it
where
was.
he did like he ran a 100-meter dash with like a tailwind from like a jet engine or something, and he ran like 9.3 or something like that. Do you
Yes.
remember that?
Yeah.
So,
Much
yeah,
more
and
popular in Asia than he is in other countries.
yeah, well, and wasn't he sponsored by an Asian apparel company for like a hot minute
Yeah,
as well?
for a bit. Yep.
Yeah, so that's probably what he's thinking. He's
When he
probably
was
like, I wanted
exiting
to.
the doping ban Doghouse, he had to be banished to a niche brand for a while until Nike said, "Come on back."
We'll just forget the whole thing. Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, I
Yes, I
mean,
feel bad for the
I think
athletes,
it's
but I
more
also
harder
feel
on.
bad for
Yeah.
myself
Oh, why?
having a tough go. You know, been better.
You upset you don't get to watch track? Is that what you upset?
Oh, I don't know. Just upset that I've never washed my hands so much in my life. It's just I'm tired of washing my hands.
Yeah. Well, if I'm gonna be honest, I mean, I worked from home a lot even when there was no virus all over the world. So if anything, it's I mean, a lot of people probably don't want to admit it. Not a lot, but there are probably a small fraction of internet-based employees who like nothing's changed, right? I've always been working from
Right.
home. Now, obviously, things have changed for small businesses and all that. I don't want to take light of what they're going through, but in my selfishness, it gives you now you have an excuse not to go out, right? You know how it's always
Oh,
like
definitely.
you always feel like the person who wants to stay in and it's kind of looking bad upon. Now everyone gets to join your lifestyle and be like, yeah, we'll just chill, watch movie, and no pressure to like make plans. There's no pressure to make plans, which is crazy. Like that's always like a
It's
thing.
true.
Like oh, we have to make plans for the weekend. Now he's like, no, you don't. No plans need to be
It's
made.
very no plans. It's actually bad for my health if I make plans. No,
Yeah,
there's a meme going around. There's a meme going around. It's that like I don't know if people have seen it. It's like that puppet bear or monkey or whatever. I don't know. You'd know it if you saw it. But it's like doing the side eye look, and it says like
yeah.
when you realize that your normal lifestyle was called quarantine, and it's like I mean, in some ways, especially like me and my son, my 4-year-old son, we're both like homebodies, and we're just like my son yesterday he was acting up a little bit for the first time, but so far he hasn't asked like what's going on. He's just like, oh, I guess we're home for a while. Like he has no idea that which is it's nice. Like ignorance is bliss, I guess. But he's just like, oh, so more iPad time and more train time. Like okay.
Cool. So
So
he's living large.
there is an advantage for being somebody who doesn't mind being cooped up. I think we're both in that same boat. So
Yeah. So IOC information will come more as we see these next 4 weeks. I think, like you
yep,
said, other countries, governing bodies will start putting more pressure and pulling out, or like making statements that say they're pulling out, and IOC is just going to feel more and more pressure. But I think in the end, IOC, they're just going to make the decision based off of the more data and also the decision on how to work with FIFA, how to work with the swimming governing body, the track and field governing body, and all those people, just to make
right.
sure that their new solution is good for all and not just like a hasty, we're doing it here. So, and even Tokyo, right?
Listen,
Because they have to assume that Tokyo can do it in 2021. They don't even know that. Like,
right,
and maybe Tokyo
yeah.
doesn't even know. Tokyo is like, well, we don't know if we can. We were planning on demolishing this building in 2021. Now we can't do that. So maybe we have to talk to someone else. I don't know. Right? So,
We were planning on burning down every stadium. Listen, the good side of this is 2021 is set up to be an epic year of sports. So if we can all agree that it's just like on Christmas Eve where you see all your presents and you're like, I want to open them so bad right now. And then your dad or your mom says, listen, if you don't open them now, I'll give you 15 more presents. And so you say, okay, I can hold off. Like next year is going to be insane. There's going to be like, the Olympics is going to be going on. We're going to have like world cross, world indoors, whatever else. It's just going to be a bonanza. So if we can hold on, all stay healthy, take a break from sports for a year, watch all the replays, take care of our health, watch every single show ever on Netflix, and stay at home. 2021 has the ability to be incredible. Now it'd be funny if everyone shows up next year and everyone's out of shape, and the men's 800 is 1 in 150, and the women's 8 is in 205. And no, I'm just kidding. But I think if we can stay patient and follow the guidelines, 2021 will be even better. Tokyo will find a way to get it worked out. For track, Eugene can be in 2022. We have no off year. It's a win. It's a win for all of us.
man, we need a clip. We need to clip that last 30 seconds of your speech right there, because you need to listen to that to kind of get you back on a happy note. I haven't seen Lincoln that positive and
Yeah.
happy since like pre-quarantine. So
Yeah, that said, I'm going to go back to sleep right after this. So, no, I'm just kidding. I mean
so
that's a glass half full view there.
yeah, one thing as we live through this quarantine life is gives us a chance to kind of reflect on you know past track seasons, and luckily FloTrack's been around for a few of them, and we've been able to like cover different like teams and individuals during their peaks. So if you go to our Flow film library, there's a shit ton of great films, and notably we did a one with Carl Lewis and the Houston Cougars last spring, and man, I was one of the lead producers of it, so I got to see Carl Lewis in his habitat, in his surroundings with the athletes, and you think you know Carl, but when you with them for multiple days throughout an entire season, you see a totally different Carl, which is pretty cool. I mean, there's like there's like a scene for those who don't know what I'm talking about. H Town Speed City, check it out. I think it's a 6 episode season. It's on FloTrack now. You can watch the archive or the series. They're like 20 to 30 minutes each episode, and it's really good. It follows them from post indoors to the outdoor season. I'm bringing it up because Texas Relays would have been this week. And Texas Relays was that moment between Houston and LSU. They had that stare down. Track Twitter blew up about it, and we captured the whole thing in our film, in our documentary. So that's on episode 2. But watch episode 1, then episode 2. But I'm bringing up episode 1 and in this podcast because there's a funny moment when Carl Lewis is talking to his athletes. They're doing their first practice for the 4x1. So they're, but some seniors graduated. So it's like the first new practice with the sophomores and freshmen now involved with 4x1 exchanges. And Carl Lewis, he's just being Carl Lewis. And off the cuff, he's like talking to these 18 to 22-year-olds and being like, you know who the fastest man who ever lived was? And like, they're all like thinking, they're like, does he want me to say you, coach, because you think you're better than Bolt because you ran at a different era? Like, they're all confused. And he keeps on repeating himself. Do you want to know who's the fastest man in the world of all time? And he says, we think it's going to be either Carl Lewis, Jesse Owens, or Usain Bolt. But he says, cavemen. And we're like, cavemen? And he says cavemen because they had to run for food and they had to run away from lions, which was not what you would think 9-time Olympic medalist 4x1 Division I coach would say, that cavemen are the fastest of all time. But it was kind of funny. And he goes off on different tangents. And if you just watch it for the Carl Lewis sound bites, you get your money's worth. But yeah, who do you think is... Do you agree with that statement? Do you think cavemen are the fastest men of all time?
Well, no, obviously I don't agree with that statement. I mean, plenty of evolution has happened since the cavemen have been around, and
But percentage-wise,
I mean, I have no idea. I have no idea. I have my popcorn and chips and soda ready anytime Carl Lewis opens his mouth. He's such an entertaining guy, and what a life that guy has lived. He's done everything, met everybody, traveled everywhere, and never met a topic that he didn't have an opinion on. And he's the star of that entire series. He makes it, not just because he's on the short list of one of the greatest track and field athletes of all time, but the guy has probably one of the greatest personalities that you could ever hope for out of an athlete. And it's so cool to see him. It's like, what is someone that famous doing coaching a college team, But I think he truly loves being around the sport, and with it, he brings his personality, and moments like that are what makes the whole series shine. Do I think cavemen are the fastest people ever? No, I don't. On not even on balance, but it doesn't matter. That's not the point. The point is that he said it, and you get you get to bask in the glory of some ridiculous statement like that. And that's what the whole series is about. And his interactions with Leroy Burrell, his interactions with athletes, they're definitely worth the price of admission. So, no, I still would put Usain Bolt above a caveman, but I'm willing to hear the argument.
well, I'll try to be a Carl Lewis defender here because I spent time with him. So I'm going to try to defend every statement he ever made, which might get harder as time goes on. But I think he's trying to say that, are you going to run faster if it's like your way of life and like in order for survival versus you're doing it for just a paycheck for fun, right? I mean, in any moment, right? When you're up against the wall and you're in survival mode, you do have different strengths that come out versus in hobby mode, right? When you're just doing it without any pressure, right? Maybe he's trying to say like cavemen had the most pressure because they were running for their lives. You're running for fun.
Yeah. No, I mean I didn't look at it through that lens, but that's an excellent point. I didn't glean that extra layer of philosophy from that. But when you do look at it like that, yes, are you doing it because you have to run? Are you doing it because it's something to fill time? That's a good way to look at it, because obviously the cavemen were fast because they had to be, and so if you apply that to the 21st century, you're fast because that's all you're compelled to do it for your livelihood. So no, it's a good point. I didn't think we were going to be getting into the zen of Carl Lewis in this episode, but like day 15 of quarantine, why not? I
And
like that. We're gonna have him on this podcast clearly at some point
we do.
to talk
And
about
you
uh, Speed City. The man was vouching for a season two. Season two obviously didn't happen. One, because we'd already done it, but two, because I think we'd all be jockeying for a season two if it was possible right now, but it's not.
yeah.
Uh, it'd just be a view from Carl Lewis's home. That's all we would be able to do right now. But I mean, it, the man is a one man show. I mean, it's that there's never a dull moment with Carl Lewis, and I miss that. And so, if you haven't watched the series, or if it's been a year since you've watched the series, I urge you to go back and check it out.
Yeah. Not to go one more point on the cavemen take to defend it once again. Because not only did they have to be fast for survival, but they had to be so fast for us to exist, right? If they weren't fast, there would be no humanity in a weird way, right?
That's a
So
good point.
they had the pressure of just like keeping their species alive. Like no one on the planet Earth is worried about, I mean, coronavirus, whatever, but like keeping the species alive, like, so that's a point about it. It's like, it's not just a selfish thing. It was like they're trying to keep their village alive.
Yeah,
They're
I'm
running.
trying to hold back a sneeze. Didn't work. Sorry.
Uh-oh. I hear
Yeah, I've
sneezing's
been a
not
little
a
under the.
coronavirus symptom, so
Yeah,
you're
I don't
good.
know. I mean, I'm full transparency. I've been a little under the weather, so but we're keeping our distance. And what can I do? I don't know.
Ooh. Uh-oh.
So I
So
I don't know what to tell you.
yeah. I'm fine, and
Yep.
I haven't. I went for a me and Jojo. What we decided to do is, in order to keep our sanity, is we go for walks every day. Because we
People are
still do our
doing.
like our
Yeah.
individual runs, but we go on nice walks that last like 20 to 40 minutes. And so
Wow.
yesterday we went for a walk to a restaurant to pick up takeout because hashtag support local businesses. That's very important. So buy local cuisine because they need us more than any time. But we went to this new chicken biscuit place and we walked downtown, and it was just like I felt like I was in a Walking Dead film because it was just
Right.
empty. There's no cars on the road.
Hmm.
You might see like one or two people walking, but it was for like downtown Austin just to be like a ghost town is just like really weird. So, but it was also
No,
peaceful.
definitely.
It was
Yeah.
very peaceful at
Yep.
least.
You got to take advantage of. You can't take for granted the little things, and no humans is a nice luxury of this quarantine. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad to hear you're getting out and living your life, going for a walk. I'm sure that wasn't a routine of yours previously.
No, it
Um,
wasn't. So it's great.
so yeah, I mean, there are some small benefits. They do not outweigh the negatives, but there are some small things that you can enjoy throughout this quarantine. And I, I I'm missing you guys. I miss you and Kevin. We're not gonna. Who knows when the next time we'll see each other in person? It may be a while. It may be at the 2021 Olympics. It may be. I don't know. I don't
2022.
know when we're gonna.
We don't even know.
Yep.
It might be wild.
I apologize that I keep having to blow my nose or wipe my nose. It's just where I'm at right now. Full transparency. Don't think I have the Rona, but nothing is nothing is guaranteed at this point. So
So yeah, if you're still listening again, email the podcast, FloTrackPodcast@gmail. Now more than ever, we need your ideas of what to talk about because, like we
yes,
just talked about today, IOC most likely ending the Olympics in 2020, which means no track at all.
so
However,
if you're I
some
was just gonna
track
say
meets
if
haven't
you're
been canceled yet. Drake
yeah
Relays is still going on. Did you see that?
what
They haven't canceled
no one's
officially
gonna
yet.
go to that. No one's gonna go
Well,
to that.
he's
It's
like
gonna can't get
the
canceled.
the Drake Relays meet director is still holding on. It's like we don't want to make any decision yet. I thought that was hilarious. It's like He's like the last man, like in a war movie, who's like hold just still standing with the flag of their nation when all the other army men are dead. They're like, I still believe in our
Yeah,
country, you know. But
they're
you know,
no one's paying attention to the Drake relays, but right now because so much else is going on, but that they need to cancel their event. I don't know what they're doing. No one's going to come to it. What I was
but
going to say is,
what if they hold out and then all of a sudden the day before Drake relays, there's just like it's gone, we're good, and he's like, I'm the only one with a track meet, and then he gets all the track money. It'll be great.
yeah,
It's a
you got
game.
a better
It's
chance of
hedging his.
winning the lottery. You got a better chance of making a vaccine at home with Coke and cheeseburgers mixed together in a blender than that is of happening. But what I was going to say is the where track and field season is right now. It's been dragged down from your desktop into the trash can, and it's got the cursor hovering over empty trash right now. It hasn't been fully emptied yet, but very very close. That's where I'm putting it.
Well, here's a good thing. Even if you do empty a trash bin, the file is still saved on your computer. You just need to know where to go. Do you know that?
Oh, see, I would not know that. No, I did
Yeah.
not know
When
that.
you
I thought it was.
when you empty trash, it doesn't empty it. It's still on your computer.
So all you criminals out there that are looking to hide files of yourself doing malfeasance, just know it's still. So can you ever permanently delete something?
So it only gets permanently deleted if you write over it again. So basically, empty a trash basically makes the ones and zeros free to be like changed. But like, say you empty your trash and you never like add anything new to your computer, that space is still available. So basically, you have a 1 gig file, you delete it. It doesn't really get deleted until you write something over that 1 gigabyte spot on your hard drive. So if you don't never
I
add
get it.
another gig onto that specific point, that file is still there.
Are you?
That makes sense?
This is incredible. We need a tech hour with Gordon Mack
Yeah, tech hour.
for this podcast. Is that? Are you talking ones and zeros? Is that like code? What is that?
Ones and zeros. It's binary. That's what code is. It's just ones and zeros, right?
Right, right, right.
Do you know that? Yeah.
Of course. No,
Like
I don't
the
know the
letter
first thing
A
about code.
is it's like a I forget what it is, but it's like might be like 0001 or something like that is the letter A or something. I'm not right, but there's a way to like, everything is named in a 1 and 0
Mm,
combination. So
I know. Yeah,
anyway,
yeah. All right, Bill Gates. Cool. Well, do we got anything else to talk about? I really I don't know. I don't know what it is. I'm trying to get over this
what?
minor cold I have. Let's hope it's minor. But what else do we got
No,
to
I
talk
mean,
about?
yeah, people should email the podcast,
Yeah,
flotrackpodcast@gmail.com. If you guys want to sponsor the podcast, feel free. This is great. We got
we'll take your money.
opportunities. We'll take the
Yep.
money. We could make half the podcast just about your sponsor, just to fill time until
There you
2021.
go.
So we're always willing for that. But we are going to start bringing in some guests on this podcast. We had Tyler Day on Friday's podcast. Feel free that podcast that Lincoln and Kevin did talk about Tyler Day's
Yep.
perspective from NCAA's getting canceled. And I'm sure we're going to start reaching out to more college and pro athletes to get their perspective of what they're doing right now. Like we said, with IOC now most likely ending the Olympics in 2020, you just got to know what the mental state of these athletes are now, right? Just like what are they thinking
Right.
about, right? So we should be doing that throughout the week. But again, we're going to be here as long as you're there on the other side, giving you content. As weird as the content will become as less and less track meets happen. But this will be the FloTrack Daily Podcast, no matter what. Coronavirus can't stop us, right?
Hopefully not. Again, my nose is running. But yeah, you got any stories? Anything to add? Any entertainment? Did you do anything fun this weekend that you can share?
Well, my fun thing was going for the walk.
Going for the
The
walk. So
walks.
you've turned into a 60-year-old man. All right.
I mean, walks are fun when you don't do them. When you're in your house all day, going for a walk
That's
is
true.
like it's like watching like a 98% Rotten Tomato movie, right? It's great. You see
Mm,
air walk breathing. It's like 3D. It's great. You just see trees and
That's
stuff. It's
true.
fun. The
Reality
sun.
is 3D. Who would have thought it wasn't 2D? It's 3D, in fact.
You
So,
should go for. Have you been outside
oh
for
yeah, oh
fun?
yeah, yeah,
You've been outside for
yeah,
fun?
yeah,
Okay. I thought you've been like
yeah. I mean, a little
keeping
bit.
everything
I
sealed
think you're
off.
beating me right now. Yeah, you're beating me right now.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
you
need to
should go
blow
for a
my nose,
walk.
and yeah, I'm gonna need to maybe feel a little better. I'm fully quarantining myself today to make sure this is just a cold. So yeah, that's where we're at. I'll take your advice. I'll take Gordon Mack's health advice, and I'll update you tomorrow on how it went.
Okay, cool.
All right.
So that'll do it for today's episode. Again, tune in every day. Go to the site and watch the Houston Speed City series on FloTrack
Right.
featuring Carl Lewis and the 2019 Houston Cougars. That will do it. Bye, everyone.
All right.